So what I was saying is, yeah. So I was talking to this guy, and like I said, he's made it to the top level of Canadian aviation, like the highest echelon that everyone wants to shoot for, right? And the ironic thing is that that's where everyone wants to be. He's there, and he's like, well, I guess, but this isn't like all that it's cracked up to be,
No,
right?
it never is. It never is.
Right?
That was Wall Street moment.
And his worry is that it's still not enough money. It's still like I have this big family I have to provide for and all that sort of stuff. So then we talk further, and it becomes so evident that this journey that he's about to embark with is the right one. It's the absolute right one he's got to go on. And then somehow, of course, the conversation with the wife happens because it's they're a married couple, and the wife gets in the way of it, and she's just like massive objection after objection after objection, doesn't trust, is fearful that it might not be the right thing, has massive hope that there is something here, has huge hope for a better lifestyle, but isn't actually able to pull the trigger and manage to actually convince him out of doing it. Mm-hmm. So this is what I mean, like this wonderful family, beautiful family, but they're at the top of middle class, and they can't take the steps to transition to that next level that's just there. I mean, from my point of view, he walked away from one of the biggest life-changing things he was ever going to go on, because he has the capital. Now we add the skill set. He has the ability to do this, but that mental part, the heart and mental piece that's missing to actually go from that upper echelon middle class into that next level rocket, that I like to call it, takes them into that place of abundance. How do we address that? Like, how is that something that gets addressed, and how do we help people with that? I have a few ideas. I just don't want to put them out before you empty your mind. What do you think we can do for them? Like, where do you think we can take them to, where they come out of this transformed, truly like transformed in how they're thinking? What do you think is possible? And then I'll put my piece into that afterwards, if that's okay.
So the way that I conceptualize any sort of transformation is you can't achieve your breakthroughs until you understand what the problems are to start with. So we talk about healing and trauma. We talk about identification of limiting beliefs. There's a lot of what I do in my coaching program. There's something that is causing stagnation. There's no way I can tell you how billionaires function if you're still locked into a pattern of beliefs and an operating system that's middle class or lower class. Like, if you're still stuck in these patterns, we have to unwind and help you identify what got you here, what no longer serves you, and then what the consistent efforts you're going to need to put in place are. So how to identify self-sabotage, how to identify opportunities to take risks when everyone else is running this way, how to identify when to go this way. So in other words, finding your own internal controls rather than relying on external inputs to drive your behavior. Number 3, what is a money mindset? How do billionaires function? What does it look like to have a morning routine where you clear your mind so that you can see the field, see the matrix, come in with a clean slate? Because all your personal garbage, believe me, is entering your decision-making when you sit down at your computer. If you're losing touch with your kids, like your wife is about to leave you, like you're gaining weight and you're not looking after yourself, I promise you all of this feeds into your psychology. So how do we put in a game plan that changes your life, not just the way that you function in the markets? Because they're all interrelated. So it would be behavioral pattern recognition, changing those patterns, developing a lifestyle that's conducive to money, changing your internal identity, how you associate with yourself, and then actually how do billionaires function and think, and how do you create networks and strategies of people to reinforce that. So creating an enabling environment to build and sustain wealth.
Yeah. And I think that's the piece that people need parallel to, okay, now you understand how to trade the stock market. Good for you. Perfect. Now you understand this game. But now, where is this human experience that you now need to truly, fully be vested into to like take this to a place where you can become that individual, right? Because okay, so I've done that, right? But still, I've done it learning all the pains and like the grind and like the struggles, like, right? So there's no way you can actually transfer that decade into 6 months, the human experience. But what I think is possible is if you can identify what their human experiences are that actually holds them back long term in what they're doing, man, we solve that for them. This is a powerful, powerful solution.
You know what's sort of interesting is as you were talking, I was thinking what might be nice as I was doing my imposter syndrome slides for a different company the other day, because they're building their teams and they're realizing this is a big issue. They have some big wins and then they crash, and then big wins and crash. It's indicative of an imposter syndrome cycle where they can't incorporate into the organism of the company wealth. So they get to a point of complacency and then they drop, and then they work really, really hard. They're here and then they drop. Yeah. So we addressed imposter syndrome. And while I was doing my research, it turns out there were like 5 major categories, 5 types of imposter syndrome. So like there's, the perfectionist, the soloist, the expert, there's different sort of categories. So what we can do is come up with like market players, the 5 personalities in the market. And we can develop solutions based on, you might be a combination of personality 2 and 3. So here are the strategies you need to implement. That way there's a level of customization, because I know not everyone functions the same way.
Yeah, totally.
But if we break it down into categories, then they can step into almost like an avatar.
Yeah.
And how does the avatar work through their issues?
Yeah. Would you be able to do those categories so we know?
Sure, of course. This is my whole jam. I break people down. We could just call them different things, but people are people in the end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I do think we're going to absolutely have these different identities that all categorize into, where they are.
You have like insane risk taker who makes a ton of money, then loses it all. Yeah. You have the person who's actually quite successful, but doesn't want to invest the capital.
Yeah.
You've got somebody who's always like, just one step behind the market, or is trying to chase what other people are doing and doesn't have confidence in themselves. Like we can talk about the 5 personalities that you've seen.
Yeah, I think this is great stuff. I think this is exactly what, what's needed now as a parallel journey.
One of the things you can do is also pre-vet them on a call. So like when they're entering your group now, what you can do is prime them. Say, I'm here to help you make money. I'm confident you can do it. And then once you're in and you're making your money, I want to talk to you about how to keep it and how to sustain it. Like you can almost prime them that this is a life-changing journey that they're going to start with you.
Well, it is, and it is, and I think the big sort of caveat I've always taken with everyone is this is life changing if you let it be.
That's it.
It's like it's one of those things that just, and I think that caveat scares a lot of people because it makes it real. It makes like, holy crap, I have to now. I have to, like, I'm forced to do this. Like, if I'm going to drop this much money and work with Eisa, it's not just about dropping the money. This is believing in me.
That's it. That's it. And I think people crave that validation more than anything. Like they want to make the money, but they also want to feel like they're the kind of person who deserves that and who fits into that category, and changing that sense of identity. And I mean this quite sincerely, like somebody who doesn't internalize the feeling of being a millionaire will never, ever get what they want out of their money. And they may not even be able to make it. Because once they do, they start, blowing it on things. They don't know how to keep it because it's almost like inconsistent with who they think they are.
Mm-hmm.
They have a dream, but they don't know how to internalize it and bring their identity into it. It's like somebody who's made a lot of money who doesn't want to walk into Louis Vuitton because they still feel like I don't belong here. Like until you can walk into freaking Louis Vuitton with confidence and know that this is your playground now, like this is where you play. That you can't, there's no way the mindset has caught up with the income. And until the two are in alignment, you will self-sabotage.
Well, I tell you, I think this is a really powerful story, and I'm sharing that with you right now because, when my first private investment went public and I had for the first time crossed my like millionaire 7-figure like net worth, like for the first, like, I could just sell everything and I'm a millionaire, right? I remember that night specifically. It was extremely exciting and depressive at the same time. It
didn't change you the way you thought it would.
I was just like, what the hell? Like, how on earth did this happen? And I'm sitting here like going, what the fuck? Okay, now what? Right? Like, right? And I think that took a massive toll on how I processed money from that point going forward. 2 things happened. I instantly became extremely scared of how much money I had in that moment.
That's
I
it.
was just like, oh my God, no way. I can't have, I don't
Yeah.
have
That rejection, that failure to internalize will 100% create a fear response. Yes.
Right. And that fear response, the irony of that fear response was the self-sabotaging that was happening, past that, because stupid expenditure. Let's just go through everything.
Oh yeah, because you don't know, your identity is not caught up with your income. That's 100%. That's so classic. You're a classic example. I would love it if you even shared that, because what you need to tell them is, I can teach you to make money, but what you don't understand is that if you want to keep it and actually have it change the way you feel, which is fundamentally what people are paying for, you need to work on this other stuff, because you'll lose it in an instant.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's no negotiation that you have to fix this part of
you. You do.
Otherwise, you will blow it up one way or another. Whether it's not in the markets, you'll blow it up by going and dumping it on stupid liabilities and something. You'll lose that money one way or another.
You know Paul Hilsey, who like made 300 grand in 2 months.
Yeah.
So he and I are working together because I got on a call with him and I was like, listen, you've made a lot of money quickly. And you came from nothing. How are you feeling? He's like, I'm fucking terrified. And I'm like, yeah, I figured as much. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to start trying to fill a hole. That gap that you feel like, my money is here, but I'm still here. You're going to try and fill this hole. You're going to spend it on watches and cars and, expensive dinners out. And it's going to be a problem because that hole will only get bigger. That emotional gap will only get bigger. And the more you spend, the more inadequate you'll feel. Because you need to spend $1,000 to feel good. That's it, subconsciously feeding back information into your mind that my inadequacy is amounting to 1,000 and then 2,000 and then 3,000. So the more you spend, the worse you actually feel. So I'm going to tell you right now, I want you over the next week to watch this pattern. And if you're noticing this and it's making you feel worse and you see your money flying out the door, I want you to come back to me, because this is exactly the kind of thing I help with. 3 days later, he's like, I'm in. He's like, I just went out to a really expensive dinner and I feel like shit. I'm in.
Yeah. And I wish there was a way to get, and I really have to be careful on how I word this, because I don't mean to say like regular class people as if they're below anything. No, but people who are in that rat race, people who truly are like, you're stuck in traffic at 5 p.m. You're stuck in traffic at 7 in the morning going to work. I wish this is something they understood, that no, that lottery ticket that you're buying every Friday night, that is not the answer to what you think the answer actually is. Yeah. And this is something that, I could talk about this forever, right? But what I would like now is to actually bring about a tangible side-by-side piece of, okay, we got your markets figured out. You understand the stock market. You're a beast. You understand how 26% just in one day. You understand how to do that, right? But now what do we do by the human experience so that you don't ruin this? I think, Hannah, this is where I know inside of my program, it's not, I don't offer this in my program. Like I'm not offering that right now, that I'm going to bring you in and make you into this person. I'm teaching you the markets, becoming self-aware, and what transformation has to happen in how you think about money to become rich. But the part that's missing is what the gap that you fill right now. That avatar, that identity, that not self-sabotaging, because it is deeply rooted into how you actually think. That piece needs to be solved. And that's what I want to add to my program. And I know I need help. I'm still helping them with the stock market, trading. The results are going to be amplified. But your entrance comes in to get them to really believe in this journey and who they are about to become, which is what leads them to put bigger position into this, get bigger results, not get defined by those bigger results, grow more, bigger results, grow, and completely detached from that identity of more results is somehow that I'm valuable. And then once they take that bigger action step, how do we actually guide them through the losses? Because those losses are also going to be bigger. The 5% of a $50,000 position in the market is obviously going to make you shit yourself when you haven't seen that. So again, how do we work on the mind part of this to not scare them into giving up? So that's going to be a challenge, that maybe not a challenge, but a objection we have to be mindful of and be ready for it to address. How can we do that? Do you have any ideas as to how we can fix? Because that's going to happen. It's going to come up.
Yeah, 100%. Because
they'll want to blame us for it too, probably.
Because they're experiencing it now. That's the whole
Yeah.
point. They're experiencing it now. So it's not as if it's caused by joining the program. But what they would have to do is to understand, first of all, at any level of risk or reward, you need to be able to maintain detached from the outcome. That doesn't mean you don't make money or you don't drive toward it, but understand that you can only control variables up to a point. And after that, there's a certain X factor where you have to be able to surrender. You need to know where to put things, where to put your effort, and then to let the other part proceed, because there is something about when you are in alignment, the right moves will happen.
Yeah.
And that faith, that ability to surrender is where power comes from.
Yeah.
It's to recognize that you are co-creating your reality with a greater universal energy. And if you can tap into that and start having a conversation with it, you begin to go in with a lot more trust and a lot more certainty, such that even if there is a drop, you know that there's another side to it, that things will come back up, or you're buffered because you've made other plays that will offset it.
Yeah.
This is not a mutual fund investment program with 100% certainty on small returns. This is necessarily a wave. There are always going to be ups and downs. And to the extent that there aren't downs, you should be afraid. The downs are just saying to you that you are part of a longer journey. So see it that way. See that this is a journey in which multiple moving pieces are there and you are co-creating that reality, but it is not entirely in your control. And if you go into this thinking money and control, or control alone is going to make you money, that's a state of contraction, emotionally and mentally. When you can enter a state of expansion, trust, your ability to delegate, your ability to see value in others, the general state of expansion will always bring more abundance, because you're opening up room for that. So when you go into the markets, you have to be in an expansive state. You have to allow for this co-creation, even when it doesn't go your way, because there was something working for you. You can't see the logic yet. You have to trust that it's there. So we'll work on surrender, we'll work on faith, we'll work on expansion, we'll work on vibrational alignment. And that's part of where the spirituality comes in. But I'm telling you that, and I will pull examples, there isn't a single billionaire out there who doesn't engage in a practice of meditation, who doesn't understand that they are co-creating their reality, who doesn't put frankly, some of the smartest and most successful people I know surround themselves with even smarter people. Why do they do that? Because they understand they can't control everything. And delegating and having faith in those around you is part of how you succeed. Because you multiply computational power when you share the burden, when you share the load, you multiply productivity.
Yeah.
So if you're not letting the market co-create with you, how are you planning on expanding your wealth once you make the money? You have no skills or ability to defer to other people and to trust that things are going to be okay.
I was actually just going through this, Hannah. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
It's in my mind. I was just on a call with a gentleman, and he's at like the upper echelon of Canadian aviation. Like you're talking like the success beacon of where you want to end up. He's there.
Nice.
Okay. He's convinced he can do this. He knows he can do this. He knows if he puts time into this program, he's going to be able to pull it off. Right. Are you still with me? I don't know if you cut out or not.
Yeah, I can see you. I don't know what happened there. I think it just sort of shut down all of a sudden. So I just restarted and now we're back.
Yeah. So what I was saying is, so I was just talking to this guy, and he, like I said, he's made it to the top level of Canadian aviation, like the highest echelon that everyone wants to shoot for, right? And the ironic thing is that that's where everyone wants to be. He's there, and he's like, well, I guess, but this isn't like all that it's cracked up to be.
No, right? It never is. It never is. Right? That was a Wall Street moment.
And his worry is that it's still not enough money. It's still like I have this big family I have to provide for and all that sort of stuff. So then we talked further, and it becomes so evident that this journey that he's about to embark with is the right one. It's the absolute right one he's got to go on. And then somehow, of course, the conversation with the wife happens, because it's they're a married couple, and the wife gets in the way of it, and she's just like massive objection after objection after objection, doesn't trust, is fearful that it might not be the right thing, has massive hope that there is something here, has huge hope for a better lifestyle, but isn't actually able to pull the trigger and manage to actually convince him out of doing it. Mm-hmm. So this is what I mean. Like, and these this wonderful family, beautiful family, but they're at the top of middle class. and they can't take the steps to transition to that next level that's just there. I mean, from my point of view, he walked away from one of the biggest life-changing things he was ever going to go on, because he has the capital. Now we add the skill set. He has the ability to do this, but that mental part, the heart and mental piece that's missing to actually go from that upper echelon middle class into that next level rocket, that I like to call it, takes them into that place of abundance. How do we address that? Like, how is that something that gets addressed, and how do we help people with that?
So do you want to sort of be able to, are we talking about at the stage where you're selling them into the initial program, or do you mean once they're
it's not even about the selling, because the selling to me is just them taking a bet on themselves, right? To me, it's like, how do we get them to understand what it is that they're actually walking away from, and get them to a place of consciousness that, listen, you came here because you got to the highest level of middle class, and you're basically saying it's not all that it's cracked up to being. You know you've got to level up, but you're not willing to take the action step.
Yeah.
Where is that missing piece for them?
So to me, it's on two sides. The first is there's a lot of myths, a lot of misconceptions and myths that have been fed into the lower and middle classes to ensure that they don't dream of taking over what in the wealthy class is seen as like limited resources. So that in order to make money, it's hard. Only certain types of people are allowed to make that kind of wealth. They're super smart, or they come from those legacy families. Somebody down here doesn't have a right to dream of here. And if you get to here, you've already gotten so lucky. How dare you dream of going here? Yeah. So there's also myths around who you become if you have money. So your identity now, or your family values or your groundedness becomes threatened. Or it's possible that self-esteem issues and self-worth issues are starting to butt up against that because you haven't dealt with childhood issues. So it's either myths fed by society around how money works, how it changes you, how hard it is to get, whether you're worthy of it, or only certain people are worthy of it, combined with your own internal limiting beliefs. That's one piece. Okay, so the external inputs and the internal traumas.
Yeah.
We got to debunk the external myths and heal from the traumas. The other piece to this is that people don't know what it looks like. So how can they understand what they're walking away from? So you hit the nail on the head. This guy thought that having middle class money would make a difference, and it didn't. Why would he get excited about upper class money? He doesn't think it's going to change anything. So what you have to tell him is that you're right. Money alone isn't going to bring you the piece you were trying to fill. But if I can give you a program that gives you the money, plus all the things that money can't buy, which is the deeper feeling of satisfaction, of wealth, of status, of being whole enough within yourself that you and your value are independent of what's in your bank account. Unless you have that, I could give you $1 billion right now and you'd still be sitting here scratching your head saying it's not enough.
I always said that to them. I always say that to them too. It's like, money's not the problem. You might think it is, but it's not. It's not the issue at all. Like money is quite literally a lifestyle choice, in my opinion, because if you truly give a shit about money, there is 50,000 things you could do right now to go make money.
100%. 100%. Right? And you can still get 8 hours of sleep. Like, you don't have to do crazy things. Like, money's out in a capitalist environment like Canada and the US. Your efforts are actually rewarded with income. It's not like the slave labor class, which still exists, by the way, in a lot of places like India, where, the lower caste in the caste system, you can work like a dog all day and still come home with pennies. Here, your efforts actually get rewarded. And the only thing we have still genetically and behaviorally internalized is a poverty mindset of our ancestors, because we just don't know what it looks like to feel rich, not just to be rich.
Yeah.
So it's that education, that internal embodiment of wealth is what you're going to be giving to them. My sense is that his wife has her own self-esteem issues. I don't know if she's attractive. I don't know if was unpopular or whatever, but for her, she internalized, don't ask for too much in life, because you're not going to get it. I don't know if she was disappointed or heartbroken at some point, or didn't get the promotion, or, didn't get into certain schools, or whatever it is. But my sense is that she has internalized a truth that there's only so far you can go, and you dare not ask for more.
That could be self-esteem. That could also, I wonder if it's just, just how upbringing could just be that too. It's just how you're
100%.
programmed from what you believe is possible, right?
Yep.
Because
So
the thing is, like, the common language of this working class, and I call them this beautiful working class because there is so much talent in every single one of them. And there's so much, genuinity that they're able to impart upon the world that makes the world a better place because they are in the brunt, they are in the trenches, they know the pains, right? But yet somehow this lack of belief is exactly what lets them not live that life of abundance, that life
well,
of
it's
impact.
been beneficial. It exists for a reason.
Yeah.
This is what kept slaves and lower class people historically in their place.
Yeah.
This is how the education system raises you. You will all sit in a row. You will all perform the same test. If you work harder, like, your only reward is more of the same type of work, and don't expect any. It was the factory system, the conveyor belt style building of the Model T car when, like, Henry Ford sort of came out and he built the Model T. He was the first person to institute a conveyor belt system where instead of building an entire car from the ground up and then building the next car from the ground up, he built 100 cars at the same time. Let's put 100 tires on, and then let's put 100 engines in. And if we can do it in conveyor belt style, we increase productivity. And what they realized is they needed factory workers who were trained to do one thing really well. You're going to be the tire guy, you're going to be the engine guy, you're going to be the tailpipe guy, you're going to be the steering wheel guy, and you'll just do this again and again. And everything was set up in a row, like a conveyor belt. It translated into an education system in which children were put into rows, and they were asked to perform the same tasks over and over again, the same homework, the same papers. And once you've instituted in your mindset that you will belong to the same class as everyone else your whole life, and that you'll have to work hard, and all you can expect is that, like, minimal reward at the end of the day. You weren't taught to think outside the box. In fact, you're reprimanded for it. If you go do an assignment that's outside of the box, you will get penalized for it. Entrepreneurs and billionaires don't sit in rows, and they don't stay in the lines.
Yeah.
You have to unlearn a lower class education system in order to embrace a millionaire or billionaire lifestyle.
And you know what? I think back to my flying career too, Hannah, where, I was always the guy who, I was not in any line. I think my bosses hated me for that because, you've got this guy who comes in, and by standards of what my peers would always tell me, knows his shit really well, right? But he just can't stay in line because he's identifying all the flaws in this corporate structure that are literally blowing up the operation on its own. But the funny thing is that, the multi-millionaire, level manager that's, ahead of making change doesn't see it till a year later, until that bomb is dropped in his company. I'm like, well, I fucking told you so. And then see ya. Like, I can't help you now. Like, you've exploded. You've literally decimated your company into pieces, right? So, and you see it on multiple levels, massive airlines, small corporate companies. Like,
100%.
it happens everywhere.
100%. And I think this is the real talk that your clients need to hear, because what you need to tell them is that this change that we're doing is not a nice to have. It's the difference between a company blowing up and you making millions in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
So you decide what side of history you want to be on. But if you're in this seat now, I'm not going to let you fall. That's what we need to tell them. That we're here to tell them what nobody in their entire life, whether at work or in their education system, has ever bothered to share with them, because nobody thought they would think outside the box, and nobody thought they would draw outside the lines. We are here to teach you how to do that with grace, with compassion.
Yeah, that's the big one too. Like, with grace and the faith into, like, this, tapping into this massive stream of energy that is actually all around you. It was just funny. Something I learned through working with you is, if you just let it in, you have to let it in. Like, when you learn to see a perspective, you just have a perspective shift, and you're like, oh, I see that totally different now. Right?
100%, yeah.
That is the click that I think needs to happen for anyone. So listen, we got you in the stock market. You'll learn this stuff. That's the easy part. That is literally the easy part. Now, can we help you shift your perspective to live with meaning? Yeah. Not just, I'm going to click some buttons and make money, because you realize after a while it means nothing. It actually means nothing. How stupid is it, Hannah? Right now, as we're sitting here talking, there's people out there on the streets. The same thing I was showing the view around my views and stuff, right? Same people down on the streets right now, they're punching clock hours in. And I'm sitting here with you, and net worth's moving up in the millions as we speak. Like, so there's money moving right now.
Yeah.
Well, why is that the hour clock punching what's going on? And why is that the level of their belief? That's what needs to be broken. Once you unleash that inside of them, holy fuck. Because then these are the people who actually transform. They need to believe that they can do it.
And they have to remember that people who have made money aren't necessarily people who belonged to a system where that was given to them either. That there are a lot of hungry people who decided that they weren't going to be identified by race, age, gender, sexual, like you are so far beyond what box society puts you in from day one, that if you can just let go of the attachment to the identity you have now, you can actually create a new one based on your values, based on your vision. But if you don't know what your values are and you don't have a vision, you will be on autopilot based on what others tell you are for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back to sleep, get out of the room now. But if you're ready to start taking your future into your hands and to recreate a vision for yourself that actually excites you, then this is where you've come. Like, this is the place you need to be. Yeah. And that's what we need to emphasize, that this is not an option. If what they're looking for is transformation, like this next stage it's instrumental. Like it can't be compromised on.
Hannah, so let's say we're able to help all these people, right? That actually connect with what we're both saying. What can we do? Because I mean, I know your passion is to help. My passion is to help. It's like we are in this mindset of like, well, we've lived the brunt of the shit, so we're familiar with that. And now we're here and we're able to look at this with a bird's eye view and say, you know what, let's help some people up. But in the journey of, okay, there's so far an arm can go. Our arm can only go so far, right? Before we can bring in this pool of people to help. What do we do to the people who hear our voice, but they're not quite ready to take action on like working with let's say a group like us? Like what can they do to get them to warm up to what this whole topic is all about? First.
So are you talking about people who are already in your group?
Potentially. Because they might be in my group and they're still so like money focused. They're not really connected yet enough with how big of a deal this other side is, right?
The messaging will be different from people who are not yet in your group and people who are in your group. So which one do you want me to start with?
Let's talk about both. Let's just talk about complete strangers that are even like, I mean, I have an audience, people are paying attention to all the stuff that's going on, right? So they're looking at this, oh, could I learn money in the stock market? Yeah, you could learn the stock market. But now, how do we get them to understand that is just part of the angle here? What can they do actively to even come to a place, climb up the proper mountain to now even look into considering working with people like us to actually get something?
Yeah.
Read books. What do they do?
I would appeal to it from two angles. The first angle is what you and I did together, which is, have you ever had an experience in your life where there was like an element where you didn't have control over it, but things just fell into place and you couldn't have planned it better and it worked out in your favor and you kind of thought to yourself, there's something else out there? Have you ever had those moments where things just worked out when you thought everything was about to go to shit and it landed safely and all that fear that had built up inside you went away because you knew somehow things were just going to be okay, and they were? That inkling that you had, those moments that give you pause, those were moments in which you started to see the field. You started to see that there is something else that is co-creating your reality with you. What if you could tap into that, lean into it, and actually start working deliberately with it to bring the life you want? And then we fast forward. Let's say, you want that house and you want the car and you want the stability for your family. Let's lean into that. Here are 3 examples of people who had that. And here's what they said. Number one, money didn't bring me the happiness I thought it would. Or the material goods seem to still leave something lacking. Or I have the money, but I actually somehow feel better when I give it away. What is that? Interestingly enough, you think that the money is your answer, but here's 3 different examples, 3 people from 3 different industries at 3 different income levels of billionaire, millionaire, whatever, who are telling you that the answer goes beyond the money. What if we could get you there and fill in the gap that even they didn't know? And then we give the final outcome, which is that if you go with us, you not only have the money that you feel you want now, but you're leaning into a co-creative process with the universe that's actually going to bring you the fulfillment too.
Mhm.
Don't just aspire to be a millionaire, aspire to feel like one.
Mhm. That's huge.
Like
To
that
actually
is the
feel like
message.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Because I can tell you from experience, being a millionaire and feeling like one, that was two very different points in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the
And what does
multi-millions after that depended on solving that point of really connecting with like, no, this is me. It's okay. Like it's all right.
100%. And what's so cool about it in some ways is that if they haven't experienced, the stability yet, they'll understand that feeling of I thought things were going to go bad, but somehow something held me. So that's like the lower income bracket you're capturing. For people who have money but still feel empty, you get the second piece there as well. And all of them are going to benefit from this journey.
Yeah. When I just recently hired a personal stylist for my clothing. Do you see
Nice.
that? I was talking about it on my Facebook. That was actually like one of the things where I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I'm like, Eisa, you've come very far, like very far from like where you where you started out from, and it's time that you not only like not only like look at, that's one thing, but that you feel it in how you present yourself.
100%.
Right? Because to me, like I've had a massive shift, I want to say in the last 4.5 years. It's been like, okay, the first part was the grind to get to the, millionaire status, and then just an absolute, parabolic shift from there. So it's been crazy, and I'm still playing a bit of catch up. And the other day, I'm like, you know what? No, this is again. I have gone through this once before. Let's really align that, right? Not because I'm going to look all, cool in clothing, but because that's a reflection of how I actually feel.
Yep.
And it's funny, as I went to West Edmonton Mall with this wonderful stylist, and as she was picking out clothes at first, I'm like, no, that's not me. I can't wear that. I can't wear. And then I put it on I'm shitting myself that I'm trying these clothes out because it's not at all who I am. But then as I put them on, I'm like,
it feels kind of nice.
I look sharp. I look great with this, right? And I was like, you know what? This is all again, even at this stage, Hannah, it's a continuous battle of like keeping up with like yourself as you're going through these.
As you're growing and changing, yeah.
It's crazy. It's beautiful.
You've got a former Wall Street lawyer.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's worked in diplomacy at the highest level. Who's like, worked on major multi-billion-dollar transactions in New York, London, and Dubai, coming to you to tell you how the rich think and how they handle and keep their money. This isn't some coach who like did a workshop and then dropped into the industry. Like this is somebody who lived and dealt, like sat next to Jamie Dimon or like, CEOs of like Fortune 500s, like on live deals, bond offerings that were like 3-4 billion. Like, and that won like multiple awards that year. Like there's a lot of, because I have a psychology background and then a ton of like actual lived experience, I don't come to you with a theoretical understanding of how people make or break companies. Like I've seen it live. And so all of this is brought to you from a place you're never going to get it anywhere else. This is not from
because you're not in that circle ever if you're not there. So you may as well hear from someone who's lived it.
Yeah. And nobody in that circle comes back to share this.
Yeah. No, I know that. And that's what's so cool about our joint journey here is that there is something about like we've made it. So now we want to go show that, hey, come on here, because this is what's possible. It's not what you think, right?
Yeah.
That's really cool. There's really no script to what we're doing. We're just authentically speaking about the truth of this. And I think people will see that in our eyes, in how we talk, in our energy, our aura.
Yeah.
That just like is already like there's the authoritative, convincing approach to that method.
Yeah, 100%. Because we didn't just like learn about it as a gimmick and decide to sell it. Like we went through the trenches. That's the difference.
Yeah.
We actually had to go and earn the knowledge. We had to go and make the mistakes. We had to go and see all the things that people do well and don't do well, and then calibrate it. And what I think is nice about us is that we have a deep sense of contribution. That most people hoard this knowledge. They have no interest in sharing it.
No.
Because that's not what we're taught to do. We're taught that there are limited resources in the world, and unless you keep it to yourself and you keep them secret, everyone's going to come and take it and threaten your ability to survive. But when you tap into an abundance mindset, and you understand that privilege comes with responsibility, you want to give it back and you don't want to waste anyone's time
Yeah.
because you didn't have to be here to share it. So if you are, you want to make sure it's of value. That's the difference.
Yeah.
I'm not here for me. I'm here to make sure that you get a leg up in life that no one else is going to give you.
Yeah. How do we answer as to why? Why? No. Like, how do we answer as to why are people like you and I doing this? Because they're going to be their biggest skepticism. I mean, they're used to 7 a.m. traffic and no one giving a shit about them until all of a sudden these two random people on the internet cares about them. Well, so, right? How do we convince them? No, we do care.
Because this is the next level of leadership. Because we don't live in a world anymore where you can just look at yourself and expect to do well. Because the only way that you lift yourself up to the next level based on today's constraints and the realities today is by lifting up the communities and the people around you, period. Yeah, so you try and do this in isolation, you're setting yourself up for failure. And that's why the old generation, the old guard, can't keep up. That's why the billionaires today are some of the youngest in the world that the world has ever seen. There is a different mindset that's being adopted. We're just ahead of the curve on it. I care about you because you and our survival is mutually linked.
Yeah.
Go pick up.
I really think so. I think you're so spot on. I think everything that happened in the 90s, 2000s, the 08 financial crisis, and even now to the pandemic where, a lot of people became poor over this, right? There is like almost this moral responsibility that if you came out ahead, then now it's like you got to go and help people. But I think here's where a lot of people get this wrong. They think help is monetary help. And that is the biggest misconception that I think anyone who hasn't made it financially, hasn't made it even in terms of fulfillment, they don't understand that it's not. No, my help to you is not giving you a break on my program. My help to you is getting you to believe in yourself enough to invest in that program because you are going to go somewhere with it. Yeah. That is the hardest thing people understand.
Yeah. Well, what's so interesting is that there is no dignity in handing out something or taking a handout. There is dignity in believing in yourself and earning knowledge so that you can sustain your own level of growth and then continue to pay it forward. Yeah. And I think what we underestimate is our deep need as human beings for freedom, respect, and dignity. You are unlocking financial freedom. You are teaching them to respect their dreams, and you are giving them the dignity to follow through on them. That is, I think, the intangibles that mean so much more than just like a 10 or 15 or 20% discount on something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, that's huge.
When there's a gravitational pull that happens when you start to speak truth. Mm-hmm. And people lean into it. And it's amazing what happens. It unlocks, just like it did for you. There's something about it that feels familiar.
Yeah.
That seems to transcend a level of skepticism. It just starts to feel like, you know what, there's something there.
Yeah.
It's like an awakening that happens. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's amazing. Cool, Hannah. All right, well, let me get to work. Do you have any questions before we end the call then? Or are you good?
No, I just want you to know that I'm committed enough to doing this that I want to go through this, even if we have one person, because I think there's something here. I doubt we will, I'm sure there will be more interest in that, but that's just more to tell you the level of commitment I have. Like, you've been in my head for the last 3 days and we had 1 30-minute call. It's because there's something here that everybody goes through when they start to level up, and money moves so fast and our identity is built over so many years. How do you expect 30, 35 years of thinking one way to suddenly match up to an income you never thought conceivable? Closing this gap is the difference between 35 more years of undoing your garbage on your own or taking 3 months to undo it, to unlock the next level.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think that summarizes exactly what it is our joint collab is going to help solve and help.
We're saving you 30 odd years. We're condensing that. Yeah. It's basically an accelerated growth plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And if anyone hears that is skeptical, well, I'm just going to look into the credentials of what we've done. So now I was just putting that together.
100%. And that's one of the nicest things. Like, I always thought, well, I did my JD, I did my MBA, I went to Wall Street. Like, people when I left were like, you're throwing your education away. But honestly, that credibility serves now. It's that litmus test that people have. Like, is somebody who had to take an oath before the New York bar around integrity and morality really going to sell me on something that she can't do? And she's got a degree to back it up in psychology from the University of Toronto. Like, this is not this is not child's play. She like went to the rarefied world that nobody can see. It's a golden locked doors that nobody gets behind and nobody ever comes out to talk about.
Yeah.
Is giving us exclusive access to a world that's built and traded on by insiders only. Like this is I'd be curious enough just with that.
Well, you know what's interesting is the beautiful combination here, and I just, as you were talking, I'm thinking to myself, going like, this is beautiful. You're from the Fortune 500 behind golden locks and golden doors, right? Mm-hmm. That's because of the path you took in life, right? I am the street version of street smart.
Yeah, I like it.
How to get to the top, right? So you take those two now, it's like you got the middle class, you got the upper echelon, let's mix the two educations and let's take you to a place you've never been.
Well, and that's it. And I'm hoping it'll unlock a slightly different demographic that would otherwise be skeptical.
Yeah.
Like to have a name brand like Sullivan and Cromwell, or like working in New York, London, and Dubai, like that's going to appeal to a slightly different person or slightly different skeptic. Because money alone doesn't talk. They want to see pedigree. And then the other side is going to be like, I don't trust those people. They're just smooth talking, slick, like lawyers. Right. I want the guy who's like going to give me the real talk, and that's going to be your appeal. And I'm hoping that together brings in like a really mixed crowd.
It's beautiful. Awesome, Hannah. Thanks for this. This is great.
This is very exciting. It's cool. Thank you for thinking of it. I mean, it came to your mind, and I'm sure it was all meant to be. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely.